conversations that connect technology, people, and innovation.
Morning. Today on NT Talks, we welcome Niall, Senior Developer Advocate at Camunda. Welcome, Niall. Camunda, for those of you that don't know, is a process orchestration and automation company that utilizes its software platform to design, execute, and control complex business processes for enterprise companies, but large and small companies as well. Over time, Niall has strategically transitioned from a pure software development role into that of developer relations, becoming one of the most recognized advocates of process automation, orchestration, and AI in the developer relations landscape. Today, we'll get a chance to learn a little bit more about Niall and a little bit more about his technical side, but also his personal side. There's always a history behind who and where we are today, and I'm excited we have this opportunity to learn a little bit more about Niall and his journey. Niall, it's a pleasure to have you here with us at NT Talks.
Thank you so much, Ron. Really appreciate the welcome. Yeah, and my technical side is always more interesting than my personal side, so I don't want to bore anybody, but just to warn people ahead of time. The technical stuff I discuss always interests me more. I'm sure it would everyone else.
Well, I'm sure that's the case, but I'm sure people will be interested in the personal as well. Let's talk a little about you and your, kind of growing up, memories of technology, computer games, and kind of what sparked your original interest in software and computers. Tell me a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, happily. So my accent betrays my my past a bit. As while I was born in Ireland, I grew up in South Africa. And that was, went to school there, had a fun time. I bumped into computers. Basically, I blame my father entirely for most things, but also my requirement for enjoying technology. He used to work for software companies as well, and we would, and I think he abandoned some technology with us, myself and my brothers, one evening, and messing around with that made me really just quite enjoy stuff, and I would just spend time sort of looking at the code that's running behind the scenes of games I would download and trying to break them. It was actually kind of fun in the early days when you don't have to write test cases. I'd later learned that was a problem, and then So
you guys would take the machines apart a little bit, but also do some of the coding and see what you could change?
I will tell you, those early days, I learned very clearly that I'm a software guy, not a hardware guy. I definitely made some things irreparable. So I very quickly gave up on any ideas or notions that I would be involved in hardware. But software was definitely a lot more fun because you could recover from messing something up with hardware. So with the software, much better. So I always preferred that. But very experimental, lots of fun messing around. And in South Africa, I'm an incredibly pale person, and in South Africa, being inside was very useful for someone who burns to a crisp. So computers really did help me out. The only burn I was going to have from the old CRT monitor that was facing me, which was a lot better than being outside at the time, I think.
And so you were actually changing some of the code to the games and making it do the things that you wanted a little bit.
Yeah, one of the easiest things to change in those old games is the story and the text that shows up for characters and stuff. And they used to have long bits of dialogue that would show up, like all the prologue and things. And I used to be able to tinker around in there, and I would do it before my brother would play the game, so that he would be really surprised that now the game directly insulted him. Which I thought was an improvement, but that was kind of fun, just being able to see.
Always an advancement, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was always fun just being able to. I think I think for everybody who goes into software development, being able to go from tinkering with just static code to see something actually execute and run in the way you wanted it to is still a kind of exciting thing. I think it's still kind of the reason you do this.
So that sort of led to the natural studying of software at college and when you returned to Dublin. And how did you then end up from Dublin, from college, ending up in Berlin and ending up at Camunda?
Yeah, so after university in Dublin, I joined a startup and I had a really fun time at that startup. There was 4 people in the startup. My name is Niall, which is relatively unusual as a name, but not in Ireland. In that company, there was 4 people. There was Niall, and Suzanne. And so to differentiate, in the first company, it was Big Niall, Small Niall, and Hairy Niall. I'm not going to let people know because they can't see my height which one I might have been. But if they can see my face at all, they might be able to have some clues. But so then I decided to move to a country that is less likely to put me in a place that hasn't that calls me Harry Niall. And I have had visited Berlin. I still love Berlin, but I moved there like 10 years ago. And because I had a kind of a nice little, I had a really fun time with working with startups. And I knew quite a lot about process automation a little bit. I just did some light Googling and bumped into Camunda. And initially I applied as a software developer, and Jakob, who's the CEO, said, absolutely not. So he just thought everyone in Camunda spoke German at the time, and I was the only English speaker, and they thought that might be disruptive. Also, he's not great at coding. So instead they offered me a position that I hadn't done before, which was around sort of consultancy, which basically meant me and Jakob would travel around and give demos and talks, and I ended up doing presentations. And over the years that fell into a role where I work with the dev team when they build new things, and when they have fun technology advancements, that we work about how that's going to affect the community, and we talk about how we can tell the community about it. And then I go out and I try and create examples and things.
They didn't settle on either Big Niall, face of the company, Little Niall, face of the company, or Harry Niall, face of the company.
No, they had no choice. They were the only ones putting my face places, which, I mean, I'm not undisposed to that. I'm fine with that. But it was at the time, because most conferences were in English that we wanted to go to, I was just sent. And I hadn't actually done any talks before I joined Camunda. So I had to learn pretty quick how to give good presentations and how to sort of get a technical message across in a way that resonates, that's entertaining, that is truthful. There's a lot of really interesting nuances that I've always loved about presenting tech to people that luckily now I do with a little more ease than I did 10 years ago.
So that became that natural title almost of developer advocate. You became the advocate of Camunda and a little bit of the face and voice in that way. But I understand that internally, they've also given you a couple of different titles as opposed to just developer advocate. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure, I'll happily. Yeah, it's a relatively recent development, because they haven't quite known where to put me as the company's grown. Because when it started, we were 20 people, so everyone did kind of everything. Titles weren't so important. Everyone was a little bit of a jack of all trades. But as we've grown, we're now I think we're over 500. It must be close to 600 people now. Titles become how you know what someone does, because we're a remote company. We are a lot of people, and you need to be able to know at a glance what folks do. And it was always a problem to find out. So internally in Camunda, I am a process alchemist and technical evangelist, which hopefully showcases the two things I do, which is I build a lot of things internally to learn about it, to find out what good use cases are, and to find out what kind of things the community might like trip over if they were just following the docs or things. And then also the evangelist part is pretty obvious. I really like being in front of an audience discussing stuff about process automation. So yeah, I think we finally hit on something that is both obscenely wordy and also technically accurate. So it's a fair shake.
Did they consider a Dr. Frankenstein, somebody who's going to play and study processes and create new things that might be lively?
I'll tell you now, Ron. The first iteration that was rejected by HR was mad scientist, just those two words. And it was both not even nearly descriptive enough of what I do, but also it probably adds even more confusion to what I'm doing in a software company. So I'm not entirely unhappy that one was thrown out, but the new one is, funnily enough, not the first draft.
So we'll stick with advocate, alchemist, and evangelist. And I think that's important part, right? You're creating, you're communicating, and you're sharing, right? So let's now talk a little bit, just getting back to Camunda and the professional development. A significant focus in the last few years has obviously been in technology. Companies are growing, left, right, and center in this area, and now particularly in AI. And so, as AI has grown, and now agentic AI, how, in the context of process automation and orchestration and the platform that Camunda creates, how have you guys sort of approached AI and agentic AI and integrating it into that?
It's a really good question, and I'll tell you where we started. We started with everyone else, which feels like a starting line where we need to race to be the first to have AI, right? And originally, we actually had a meeting internally in which we were talking about how do we properly integrate specifically agent technology, because that suits automation, because it's about decision making, it's about task orientated execution. So AI agent technology really there's definitely a fit there. So we thought, how do we integrate it? And we came up with two possibilities. We said there's a fast way of doing it, and then there's the right way of doing it. And this was only about maybe less than a year ago, I think, when we had these two options. The first one was to build an external AI component, right? We don't need to deal with we don't need to embed it in our existing software, so therefore it requires a little less work around with our existing systems. It'll be fast because we can create a new team to just build it on a green field. And then we thought, yeah, that's fast, but let's look long term. What that's adding is a separation, like a distinct separation between the deterministic execution of a process and the dynamic execution of a process, right? The dynamic agent oriented stuff. And the fact is, when people go and build their automations, they don't think, oh, now I'll go build the non-deterministic part, right? Or the dynamic part. They're trying to build everything. So we decided in the end, let's fully integrate AI agents as a native part of BPMN, or the notation we use for building processes. And this actually really, in a really nice way, allowed us to benefit from the years of features we've been building, because once you start building this natively, you get all of the features that you wanted. Like, for instance, let's think of something really hard. An agent is running and it's doing something, and it's, there's loads of stuff happening. It's been running for like a day or two. And then you deploy a new version of that agent. Now imagine needing a feature to migrate the state of that currently running agent to the new version of the agent that might have a new tool, might have a new system prompt. I mean, that would have been a really big deal had we built this as a separate component. But we built it natively in Camunda's existing engine. So that's already part. We already have migration. So that's out of the box. So what we end up with is we took a little longer to release the first iteration, because it's coming out in October, which is, I don't know when this goes out, but that'll be a 14th of October, which is either in the past and I remember it very fondly, or it's in the future and I'm looking forward to it. Either case, definitely true. And what we end up with is a much more solid experience for folks who are building processes, much easier to maintain, and we don't need to do this weird thing of separating our features into, oh, that's one for the AI component and that's one for the process engine, right? All features are equal, all features are available. I think it was a really good choice. So when I look back so far, it's only been a year, we'll see how it goes, at like how we looked at AI and looked at integrating it. I'm so happy about that particular choice. And I'm so glad that we didn't sacrifice quality for speed, because we could have had something out in 5 or 6 months, but it wouldn't have been as good.
Does that assist in both from a governance and a regulatory or an audit standpoint, having it internal that way, all wrapped in?
Oh, it is. Yeah, Ron, you're exactly right. Actually, that is one of the key things, because when we think about process, because most of Camunda's customers are financial institutions. And so the audit trail is fundamentally important, not just for AI execution, but for all execution of processes. And by making our AI components, our agent building components and our agent execution components part of our existing engine, it means that you have a completely immutable audit trail that doesn't need to disappear somewhere else when an agent runs, but it runs completely through the process, whether it's an agent, whether it's just a series of tasks, it's all the same and can all be audited the same. It's a very good point you brought up. It's actually especially for financial institutions. it's a really big differentiator.
I would think not only financial, but insurance would be the same. Any regulatory, pharmaceuticals, bio, agriculture, right? There are so many today. Most businesses really require that kind of audit and that kind of trail. Financial obviously pops to mind, and I know that's a major use both for Camunda and for NT Consult, but I think it crosses multiple industries. And I know you guys, Camunda as well as we, serve multiple industries. So that's great. But how about an example for a project made for either a financial institution using an AI agent or something that's simple enough that the listener can understand and we can follow in a few minutes, but still an example?
Sure, happily. So from a financial institution, there's a really good one. There's a very large financial institution that we did a POC with recently, and their big problem was corporate onboarding. And this is where you have a very large client, money-wise, not necessarily weight or mass, and they want to buy loads of financial project products from the company. And those are, first of all, low throughput, meaning that you only get a couple of them, maybe a week, right? Like huge amounts. They're all completely different and follow completely different things they want to purchase, locations and where they're from and all sorts of different factors, which means they have to go through a whole litany of different checks and insurances and all sorts of stuff. And what ended up happening was they would have to have people who really knew the procedures and really knew the law to really understand what they were able to do. But also that took forever. So their big problem was lead time. It would take like a long, long time to complete these. So what they built was they built an agent where if you give it this stuff and you ask, give me a plan of action to make sure I can make this corporate onboarding run either as fast as possible or have a least communication to the customer as possible, because they don't want to bother the customer very often. They don't want to ask them for documents multiple days in a row. So the agent basically has a bunch of tools that allows it to check up all this legislation, to validate where the person is from, and maybe they have to show an ID, but they also need an ID for this particular thing. And they gather it all together and they say, here is the path you should follow. Here are the things, the procedure you should follow in order to get things open the fastest. So do it in this order, get these documents up front, blah, blah, blah. And then the other one is, okay, we've ordered it so that you basically send 2 requests to the customer maximum. And here's the order in which you can do everything to make sure that you're going to have all those requests done. And this was so important and so difficult to do up until now, but an agent does it really easily. And you then shrink the lead time by about 75% on this onboarding.
And that kind of complexity with those kinds of high net worth or just very complex, financial customers, I think it can be sort of spread when you look at just a loan origination or a bunch of other things that might be more common, but you still have to use that agent that can still speed that entire process up, I would guess.
Yeah, because each individual process is actually really well automated and really, really like if you were going to a bank for a loan, because that's such a high throughput a request, that's really fairly well automated because they realize that. But it's these really the place where AI seems to really be a big differentiator is these relatively low throughput but high value use cases, stuff that people are sort of the cost to automate the possible different parameters of solutions here is just not worth it, because it could change every year because legislation changes, right? So therefore the process would change. So like it's very interesting that those are the real value cases, but not always. If you're interested, I could tell you the opposite, actually, a telco example, right? So I mentioned, I don't know why I'm already deciding to undo all the good work I did in saying that low throughput is great, but there was this high throughput scenario where these alarms so this telco company has all of these components throughout the network, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, and every minute about 100 alarms go off. They're called alarms for the components that says something is wrong. That is really high throughput. Now, solving this generally takes rebooting the system. But that's just because that's the fastest way to solve it, not the best. So they basically have to sort of deal with all these incoming things, and they generally have to solve it in the dumbest way possible. Now you would think, well, I can't add AI to that because I can't be running an AI agent 100 times a second. Like, that's going to bankrupt me, right? So instead what they do is, which I think is very clever, they take one of those alarms that they know they haven't, the criteria of which the vendor might be different from the component, the type of system might be different. Like, all these components are so unique. And it basically, you give it to the agent to solve it like a detective. How would you solve it if you had time? And so the agent then solves for that alarm and then stores in long-term memory how that thing gets solved. And then you have a deterministic section.
And the next time that alarm pops up.
Yeah, you don't give it to the agent. You just give the instructions to a deterministic flow that then learns from what the agent did. Now, then you have a really cool thing, because then you have all these throughputs and you're just looking for alarms that the agent has never solved before. And then it just does those. And then slowly but surely you end up solving these alarms in the most efficient way, even though there's really high throughput. So I kind of love that use case.
Yeah, that's a great example. And then, so we go from financial institutions to telecom, but I understand that Camunda also has been involved with NASA, an organization that symbolizes, precision, scale, complexity. Kind of, how's it been? Have you had any interactions with that, or how's it been from a cultural perspective to contribute to solutions by such a high profile and, kind of exciting institution?
Yeah, no, yeah, they've started using Camunda a very long time ago now, and they use it on the Mars rover for image processing, and that was really cool. They did a lot of the stuff themselves, I should mention. I don't think they need our help. They're NASA, they're literally NASA scientists. I think they're going to be okay with our software. So really, we didn't need to help them. But because I'm in Europe, another one of the folks who use Camunda is CERN, which is down in Geneva. So they also use Camunda. They use it for automating materials for experiments, specifically nuclear materials or like hazardous materials for experiments, and how you're able to move them around the facility. Because one of the very interesting things about CERN is that CERN is built on the border of Switzerland and France, right? And as you know, hey, there's no Europe doesn't really have much of a border going on anymore these days, so you think that's fine. But Switzerland is not in the EU, and France is in the EU. And while people can move back and forth, hazardous materials cannot. So if you are moving something from one lab in CERN to another lab in CERN, you might actually be crossing international borders, and you actually need to create a whole bunch of paperwork and stuff to move it. So we automated that as part of, like, I think that's what they did. I'm trying to remember. They did talk about it in CamundaCon, but that was a really fun use case, I think, because I probably didn't even know existed.
So there are just a lot of cutting edge, I think, use cases. It strikes me as I was listening to that, I was thinking about maybe some of the big telescopes that are gathering information, out from the universe, right? And processing a lot of stuff. I could see uses there too. But great stuff. Let's come back to the world, if you will. How do you see what do you see AI shaping sort of in the future of the digital transformation for organizations? We know it's increasingly complex. There's more data, more and more stuff. What's kind of on the horizon that you see?
Yeah, so that's such a weird question because the horizons never felt so close, right? It's such a funny thing. Like, if you'd asked me maybe a couple of years ago what's on the horizon for AI, I would have glanced into the distance and thought, oh, what are the possibilities in the future? But the funny thing is, like, I'm sure you're feeling the same, but like, whenever you think what's going to be the cool new use case, or what's going to be like in 3 months, like, what kind of weird thing we're going to find then? The Camunda, internally, we just finished the internal hack days at Camunda the last couple of days, and people were sort of incentivized to try and use as much AI generated code as possible. And we run hack days all the time. But the thing that actually is clearly going to, just based on the hack days, just seeing the presentation, is going to really affect the world, I think, is how quick you can go from an idea to reality and have something working, because the only thing that tends to slow you down is getting the prototype up and running, tweaking those kinds of things. And while I think it'll be great for these big businesses and automation and efficiency and stuff, I think we are lucky enough to be able to use this in the future to get more ideas in action. They may not all work, but lots of people have lots of ideas. And if you think about it, if you have an idea, that's great. Then there are a million ideas for every sort of implementation of a good idea. And so I think we have with AI the ability to sort of rapidly prototype brand new ideas in the fastest way we ever have for software. And I think we're going to see a lot of unique ideas that in the past you would have thought, well, that probably won't work, so I'm just not going to bother. But hey, now there's a really low barrier to entry. Why not try? And maybe it'll be an interesting solution.
And I think this is true for a lot of the mid-size and smaller companies as well, where it's, hey, just be inquisitive and start small, but start on something. Right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Definitely a huge boon for startups, for sure. Because again, I remember Camunda was kind of a startup when I started. It was 20 people, I think. So it was doing pretty well. But we used to prototype stuff all the time. And I remember we have a product called Optimize, right? And this is a product that is used to visualize reporting on your processes. This shows heat maps and stuff. Now, the original version of that was a project done internally just for a hack day. And about a week, I think it took to build the original Optimize prototype. Right. And then we went on to build the real thing when we realized it was quite a good idea. Right. So the thing about that week was developers had to stop working on stuff for the real product. Right. A team had to get together and you spend a week of development effort on your current project on this R&D. And if we had a way of just getting that boilerplate done as quickly as possible and then work on the brand new stuff ourselves, I think we could have been even more innovative with fewer people and cost us fewer developer hours. And I think that is going forward for startups. I think they should embrace R&D much stronger, because it's going to be the barrier to entry for R&D for startups as they go forward. It's going to be so easy to get over.
Yeah, I think the key is just getting started and using something and trying it, because again, otherwise it's just, you're going to get left behind and you're going to miss out on some great opportunities. Let me kind of change directions here briefly, just towards the end of our conversation. Money 2020, a big financial sector meeting's coming up in October in Las Vegas for US North America. And I know Camunda will be there. We'll be there as well. And I know that financial services has been a large sector for Camunda. As we look ahead to that, do you have any sense of, how Camunda sees its role in shaping the narrative around innovation and transformation in financial services?
Yeah, we do have a huge amount of customers from the financial services and insurance institution. I still remember, I mentioned to the folks here a little while ago that visiting Santander in Sao Paulo was really great to sort of to do a little workshop with those folks. And there's a lot of potential here for things that were not possible to speed up in the past or to automate properly. There's a huge amount of work being done by very talented people that really they should be focusing on the stuff that they're really talented on. A really good example is when you have folks we've built a fraud checking sort of POC thing for a company. And the thing is, the folks who actually dive into this and look for potential fraud in moving money or purchasing things, they're very clever people. But you have them doing stuff like querying data sources for additional information or sending emails or composing emails out to people. And that's required to do their job, right? But looking at what their core skill set is, those are not what they should be up to. Instead, you should be using an AI agent to really enhance the use of those core people skills, those really clever knowledge workers, and have an agent that's really going to work around what their core responsibility is to make sure that what they're doing most hours of the day they're working is the thing that their knowledge is most valuable for. And I see that as being a big innovation. It's mainly because I think folks, when they think about the possibilities of AI, can often think a lot about removing humans for some reason. But actually, that's really the wrong approach, because they'll always be necessary. And in fact, I think we probably both agree on this, Ron, that probably necessary more than ever, I think, is human oversight with AI stuff. And these kinds of knowledge workers are a perfect place to try and integrate AI, because they can be the gatekeepers to ensure AI agents don't do really dumb stuff, because they have the knowledge to do it. And AI agents can go and do all the other connect to other systems, correlate data correctly, send out requests for information. They can do all the busy work, while you have these really clever gatekeepers who are doing their job.
Exactly. There are a lot of end-to-end processes where we can sort of speed up the process, but not replace the individual, but enhance them by providing them more time to do, as you say, the things that they're so clever at. So that's great. And then I really think, that's the summary. I mean, I think, in South America, we've got Latin America, we've got a lot going on with a lot of different clients. It's one of the, fourth largest continent by GDP. And we have a lot going on with Brazil, Argentina, and other places down there. So we are just continuing to grow, and we really appreciate the partnership with Camunda. It's been a pleasure having you. Really appreciate your time, your journey, and for you sharing a little bit more about your journey at Camunda and your titles.
Thanks.
So we're proud to be a Camunda Platinum partner, and we look forward to continued success. Do you have anything that you might want to add at the end here?
Yeah, well, I wanted to mention that I thoroughly enjoy that. I love the events that Camunda throws, because that's when I usually have a fun time, and I love that NT Consult always shows up to all of these events in force too. So I always get to meet a whole bunch of people who either have to endure either Berlin autumn or but they power through. They're real champs. But it also, the folks who I've talked to NT Consult, they really do have a lot of stuff that I really like when I chat with people about tech. Like I think Raimundo, is big into BPMN, because I love chatting with him about that stuff, because we're both real nerds about it. So that's really nice when you find somebody who is like the same wavelength as and it's such a unique thing, the kind of thing that my friends and partner would absolutely not want to talk to me about under any circumstances. It's nice to find those people at conferences and things.
We may need to add alchemist to Raimundo's title. Well, we look forward to hopefully seeing you at CamundaCon in New York, but we'll also be at Money 2020. And again, a real pleasure, Niall, thank you so much for your time. What you guys are doing is terrific, and we love the creativity and the passion.
Thanks so much, Ron. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
NT Consult. Great people coding the future.